Diddy Combs' defense is requesting either a new trial or an acquittal altogether. Combs was found not guilty of the more serious sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy charges, but was convicted of transporting sex workers across state lines. Now his attorneys say his actions don't fit the crime. Let's bring in Chief Investigative Correspondent Aaron Katersky and ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer for more. Aaron, what's the latest here?
So, Diane, his attorneys say that the way this was charged doesn't exactly match what Sean Combs did. And they say he's the only person who's ever been convicted of this charge, transportation for the purposes of prostitution, who hasn't benefited from the prostitution other than through voyeurism. They say voyeurism, watching other people have sex, isn't what this law was meant to address. Combs, they say, didn't profit from the prostitution. In other words, he was no pimp here. And
Diddy's empire is collapsing, and the truth behind his desperate $50 million bail offer is darker than anyone knows. Facing up to 10 years behind bars, powerful enemies and explosive secrets threaten to bring it all down. Who's really pulling the strings? And what will happen if Diddy decides to talk? Watch now before this story disappears forever. What would drive someone to offer $50 million just for a chance at freedom? The answer reveals a high-stakes battle that's far from over. The layers behind Diddy's desperate fight to get out of jail expose a web of power, danger, and legal drama you won't believe. Diddy's legal team recently filed explosive documents demanding his release from Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center, where he remains locked up.
Well, Diddy is upping his offer to the government. He wants out of jail right now. You know that he is still behind bars at Brooklyn MDC while he is awaiting his sentence in October. But
pushing hard, not only asking for bail, but demanding either a brand new trial or a complete dismissal of the charges. This move follows reports that prosecutors are now seeking a harsh 10-year prison sentence, much tougher than earlier predictions. Here's the staggering detail. Diddy's lawyers are now offering a staggering $50 million bail package in hopes of securing his freedom before sentencing. This marks the fifth bail request filed by his team, highlighting the escalating desperation behind the scenes. Earlier attempts, including a $1 million offer, were firmly rejected by the judge. What changed to justify such a massive increase? That's where the story thickens. The defense argues that Diddy should be allowed to await sentencing under house arrest at his Miami mansion. However, the judge has ruled firmly that Diddy must stay behind bars until his sentencing on October 3rd. This decision hinges heavily on Diddy's admitted history of violence toward former partners, including Cassie Ventura. The judge's words were chilling. It's impossible for the defendant to show he possesses no danger to any person. Those words carry serious weight in the court's refusal to grant bail. Prosecutors maintain that releasing Diddy would put the community at risk, pointing to his ongoing threat. Sources describe Diddy as increasingly desperate, ready to pay any price to avoid prison. This high-stakes battle of money, influence, and reputation is just beginning. Before diving deeper, it's important to understand the specific charges that brought Diddy to this critical point. The legal battle centers around the Mann Act, a federal law originally designed to stop the transportation of individuals across state lines for prostitution. Diddy was convicted on 2 felony counts under the Mann Act, which means prosecutors proved he transported individuals across state lines with the intent of engaging in prostitution. However, he was acquitted of the more serious sex trafficking conspiracy charges that carry heavier penalties.
The jury in the federal trial of hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs has come to a verdict. Guilty on the charge of transportation to engage in prostitution, but not guilty of sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy. The jury, made up of 8 men and 4 women, heard from 34 witnesses called by the prosecution, including 2 of Combs' former girlfriends, Cassie Ventura, and a woman testifying under the alias Jane.
This split verdict adds complexity to the case. Historically, the Mann Act targets those who profit financially from prostitution: pimps, traffickers, and those running prostitution rings. Prosecutors allege Diddy transported sex workers hundreds of times over many years, effectively enabling prostitution on a large scale. They say this was not a one-time incident, but a decades-long pattern. The defense takes a different stance. Diddy's lawyers argue he neither profited from prostitution nor acted as a pimp or even a client. Instead, they describe his role as voyeurism, simply watching others engage in sex at parties. According to them, voyeurism isn't what the Mann Act was meant to address, and this should affect the charges. Prosecutors, though, push back hard. They claim Diddy supplied drugs to his partners Cassie and Jane to ensure their participation in what they called marathon freak-off sessions. On top of that, prosecutors accuse Diddy of violent behavior toward these women, painting a picture of coercion and abuse.
The indictment alleges that Combs abused and exploited women and other people for years, and in a variety of ways. As alleged, Combs used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sexual performances with male commercial sex workers, some of whom he transported or caused to be transported over state lines. Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them. The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time, involved multiple commercial sex workers, and often involved a variety of narcotics, such as ketamine, ecstasy, and GHB, which Combs distributed to the victims to keep them obedient and compliant. As alleged, when Combs didn't get his way, he was violent, and he subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse.
Mark Agnafalo, Diddy's lead attorney, insists his client is innocent because he never personally engaged in sexual acts. But prosecutors emphasize that Diddy arranged and forced others to participate, making him culpable. The judge and prosecution rejected the defense's arguments, underscoring the danger Diddy poses to the public and highlighting his violent tendencies. And that's the legal twist at the heart of this explosive case, one that blurs the lines of law, power, and responsibility in ways few expected. Life behind bars at Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center, or MDC, is far from what anyone might imagine for a music mogul like Diddy. The facility is notorious for its harsh, violent environment, and the conditions Diddy faces paint a grim picture. He's confined to his cell 23 hours a day, with only a single hour allowed for recreation. Showers are limited to just 3 times a week. The meals he receives are basic: egg noodles, cereal, chili, peas, with vegetarian options available, but far from the luxurious lifestyle he once knew. The prison commissary offers snacks and essential items, but at steep prices. For example, a 6-pack of Hershey bars costs $75, and peanut butter runs about $3. Diddy must wear standard prison attire, including sweatpants, though he can buy extras like New Balance sneakers for roughly $55. To pass time, inmates can purchase MP3 players for under $90, but Diddy's spending is capped at $160, an enormous downgrade from his usual millions. Insiders reveal that Diddy recently experienced a mental breakdown, reportedly crying in his cell and begging guards for medical attention, which was denied. When he first arrived, he was put on suicide watch and housed in a special protective unit, but he's since been moved to the general population, an area that exposes him to higher risks from other inmates. Sources say Diddy fears for his life and feels targeted inside MDC. The detention center itself is under federal investigation due to rampant corruption, widespread drug smuggling, escalating violence, and multiple mysterious inmate deaths. Former prisoners and reporters describe the MDC as a terrifying place, with terrible conditions and dangerous inmates. This brutal reality stands in stark contrast to the glamorous image Diddy once commanded, revealing a harsh chapter few expected. And that's just the beginning of what this prison saga entails. The fallout from Diddy's legal troubles stretches far beyond the courtroom, entangling business disputes and powerful enemies. In 2023, Diddy filed a high-profile lawsuit against Diageo, accusing the global liquor giant of racial discrimination and breaching their billion-dollar tequila partnership.
Diddy sues Diageo, who is the owner of Ciroc, for racism or something like that. Diageo apparently, I think they might have lost the lawsuit. Diageo allegedly sends out private investigators to start snooping around and seeing some shit that Diddy might do. There's one way that you could nullify their contract, and that is if he breaks a morality clause. So if you are charged with a federal crime, that might be enough to break your contract, right? Because, for example, if you're the ambassador of a brand, but then you're charged with a felony, you can't stay on as the ambassador for the brand, so that would nullify it. So maybe in an effort to save the $1 billion payout or whatever it was, they tell these private investigators, dig up as much as possible. They've got connections to feds. I mean, this is the liquor lobby at the end of the day, right? This is a very powerful lobby. They start giving them this information, and then the feds go after it. They have a real case.
Since 2013, Diddy and Diageo had co-owned De Leon Tequila, a relationship that was supposed to be mutually profitable. The lawsuit claimed Diageo marketed De Leon as merely an urban product and failed to treat Diddy as a genuine business partner. This battle played out behind closed doors, culminating in a confidential settlement in January 2024. But just 2 months later, in March 2024, federal agents raided Diddy's Miami and Los Angeles homes, confiscating a staggering 90 terabytes of digital data. The timing has raised eyebrows. Whispers in the industry suggest that Hollywood elites and powerful figures might be orchestrating moves to silence Diddy. After decades in the business, Diddy allegedly holds explosive knowledge of secret deals, cover-ups, and illegal activities that could topple influential players. This has fueled what some call the Epstein theory, where insiders fear Diddy could face severe consequences if he reveals too much. Adding another layer to this intrigue, rap mogul Suge Knight claims Diddy has been an FBI informant for years, playing both sides to protect himself while keeping his operations running in the background. Meanwhile, Gene Deal warns that Diddy might not withstand prison life, hinting that the sudden lifestyle change could push him toward drastic decisions, including suicide. Yet, despite the chaos, some insiders insist Diddy still has enough money and influence to potentially buy his way out. The stakes are sky high, and the forces arrayed against him are formidable. The countdown is on. Diddy's sentencing is set for October 3rd, 2025.
A federal judge has ruled Sean Diddy Combs will remain behind bars until his sentencing this fall. This is the second time the judge has denied a bail motion to release Combs. In his ruling, the judge said the hip-hop mogul, quote, fails to satisfy his burden to demonstrate an entitlement to release. It comes after one of Combs' ex-girlfriends, Virginia Hewitt, wrote a letter to the judge urging his release on bail. She was identified as victim 3 in the government's indictment against Combs, but ultimately did not testify in the trial. Combs was found guilty on 2 counts of interstate prostitution last month, but was acquitted on the more serious charges of racketeering and sex trafficking.
His future hinges on a delicate balance of legal strategy, judicial decisions, and behind-the-scenes reports that could change everything. Based on the Mann Act violations, Diddy faces an expected prison term ranging from 22 to 54 months. However, prosecutors have recently pushed for a much longer sentence, possibly up to 10 years, signaling their intent to make an example out of him. The judge has repeatedly denied bail, emphasizing public safety and referencing Diddy's violent past as a key concern. A critical piece of the puzzle is Diddy's pre-sentencing report. This document will examine his criminal history, victim impact statements, and whether he shows remorse. If the report paints him as a manipulative, unrepentant predator, the court may impose a harsher sentence. Conversely, cooperation and participation in prison programs related to his conviction could influence parole opportunities down the line. Within 1600, Diddy faces a grueling daily reality that challenges both his mental and physical health. The harsh conditions and isolation make survival a constant struggle. Beyond the personal toll, there are serious concerns about retaliation against witnesses and victims if Diddy were to be released, which weighs heavily on the court's decisions. Meanwhile, the federal investigation into MDC's corruption, violence, and safety protocols continues, potentially impacting the environment Diddy will endure during his incarceration. The road ahead for Diddy is uncertain and fraught with danger. Every detail, legal, personal, and institutional, could tip the scales toward freedom or a long prison sentence. The coming weeks will reveal whether Diddy can navigate this storm or if the full weight of justice will finally catch up to him. As Diddy's legal battle intensifies and his sentencing date draws near, the tension continues to build. From the courtroom drama to the harsh conditions behind bars, every moment shapes a future filled with uncertainty and high stakes. Powerful enemies, ongoing investigations, and the fight for survival all collide in this gripping story.